This is Our View, brought to you by the members of the Washington Federation of State Employees. Federation members of Local 482 provide living services at Retsil, a state home for veterans. They recently celebrated the local's 60th anniversary and make it clear that this is more than just a job.
For one reason or another, we all chose to be here. We chose to participate, and it's a little bit different for each of us, but we all have that sense of duty. The jobs from when I was in the Marine Corps to nursing are completely different. They're on opposite ends of the scope. I repaired firearms in the Marine Corps. And it wasn't until I discovered a passion for helping people that needed help that I really wanted to become a nurse. Then I became a nurse, and I thought that the best people that I could help were the people most closely related to me. And those are my brethren, my fellow Marines and other service members.
It's really, really important that we honor those rights the veterans fought for, and unions are a way to do that. Keep fighting for that voice that men have died for, many people have died for across the world, to have this voice. We're lucky enough to be able to form our own unions, to have a voice in work and make sure that we have good working conditions. And when you have those, you have people who are really dedicated to the work that they are doing. We take pride in taking care of our veterans. If it weren't for them, we wouldn't have our voice.
Here are other state employees whose jobs can affect the quality of life for the people they serve. In this case, it's children. And they spend a day asking legislators to care as much as they do.
I am specifically passionate about child welfare. That is what I do. I've been in this field for 8 years and I love it, and I really care about kids and families. And right now the state is really struggling to serve kids and families, and there are a lot of ways where we aren't doing nearly as well as we could. And the primary reason for these problems right now is the budget situation and a lack of sufficient resources to be able to do the job efficiently and effectively. And I'm really concerned about it.
We're above the standards that we should be for workload. So I and my coworkers have more cases than is desirable or recommended by the prom lawsuit, as well as obvious common sense. And when you have too much to do and you have too many cases to overlook, you miss things. Things you would have caught obviously with being able to pay attention to all the things that you're supposed to, you don't get to see if you're too busy, if you have too many cases.
At this point, if we don't get more resources, we are going to continue to see an escalation in children suffering serious harm, not just at the hands of their parents, but children suffering serious harm because they're going to be in the system for prolonged periods of time. We don't have the resources right now to meet legal sufficiency for termination, so we're not going to be able to get to termination. We don't have the resources right now to get the kids home to their parents. We're not meeting our legal mandates. We're getting sanctioned in court. And the kids are lingering in the foster care system and will continue to linger in the foster care system because we aren't doing an adequate job to be able to get them home, and we don't have the resources to do that job.
The way the minimum wage workers live today is stressful. I work up in Kent at Popeyes. I make minimum wage. I only work like 47 hours every 2 weeks. You know, make $300 and, you know, can't support myself, can't support my family. You know, we're about to lose our apartment and there's no reason for you to be able to become homeless and still holding down the job, you know, trying to work. A lot of us are here because we're trying to make it. We've been out here trying to survive, you know, surviving, but we're trying to live. You know, there's a difference between living and surviving. And right now we're surviving because we can't really live. but I'm stressing myself out, trying to work, trying to get more hours, and to the point that I can't even make it. Sometimes makes me feel as though is it even worth getting up and going to work for change. That's basically what we're making, is a little bit of change.
During January, we celebrate the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King will always be a part of our union because he was in the city of Memphis to march with the sanitation workers, members of AFSCME, when he was assassinated.
In February 1968, in Memphis, Tennessee, some 1,300 sanitation workers, members of Local 1733 of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, began a strike. This wasn't an ordinary strike. We forged together a coalition of the religious community, the civil rights community, and the labor movement. It was a struggle for freedom, for dignity, for decency, for equality.
We are saying that we are determined to be men. We are saying that we are God's children.
After a few days, we found that the strike was more than just a recognition and economic strike. It was a social struggle in this society. We talked, they didn't listen. Management and the establishment here wanted no relationship with unions whatsoever.
When a public official orders a group of men to get back to work and then we'll talk, and treats them as though they are not men, that's a racist point of view.
We were told to meet with the council. When we got there, one of the most crude charades in the many years I've represented working people took place.
When they told me there'd be an honest council meeting today, and you and I would have a chance to talk to this council, I regret I believed them. They lied to me and they lied to you.
We decided to march to the Claiborne Temple. And as soon as we got out there, some of the police officers, not all of them, began hassling some of our folks, and I remember intervening and promised them faithfully that these men did not believe in violence, that the union did not believe in violence. We started a march, and we moved down there, and police cars we used to harass us and push us around, and this was a turning point.
I don't know who it was. Somebody hollered and said, break it up. And they just broke right on us. And honest for God and heaven. And they sprayed so much that stuff down my collar until I could feel it look like running down my back.
We built into our planning the escalation principle in order to help momentum build. Mass meetings every night, daily marches of the workers and clergy, and then sit-ins at the City Hall, which resulted at least one time in major arrests of many of us. In the meantime, I had been talking with Dr. Martin Luther King about his support and about his coming in order to both identify the struggle with himself and to help the people in the community identify the struggle in terms of a nonviolent campaign.
You are demanding that this city will respect the dignity of labor. So often we overlook the worth and the significance of those who are not in professional jobs, of those who are not in the so-called big jobs. But let me say to you tonight that whenever you are engaged in work that serves humanity and is for the building of humanity, it has dignity and it has worth. You are reminding not only Memphis, but you are reminding the nation that it is a crime for people to live in this rich nation and receive starvation wages.
On March 28th, Dr. Martin Luther King led a march here in Memphis in support of the sanitation workers. This is one of the few times when his staff did not organize the march. Some of the young people saw this as an opportunity to demonstrate their frustration in what they considered the slowness with which the community leadership was moving. They began to break out windows and disrupt the march. This gave the policemen an opportunity to move in, to break up the march in an effort to discredit Dr. Martin Luther King and the local leadership.
When we came back downtown the following day, really to be confronted with tanks and half-tracks and jeeps and National Guardmen with bayonets all over the place, it really sort of provided the classic kind of confrontation between striking workers with nothing more than a picket sign and really what was the might of the armed forces of this city.
Somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest for rights.
At the time that I heard the news of Dr. King's death, we were still struggling to arrive at an acceptable compromise. So many times in issues of this type, a little bit more leadership, a little bit more wisdom, a little bit more vision, and a little bit more flexibility would enable you to deal with a problem. And yet this time we were not, and we had to have the tragedy to bring us to our senses.
The City of Memphis recognizes the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFL-CIO, Local 1733, as a designated representative for certain employees in the Division of Public Works.
In 1968, Dr. King took his struggle for full democracy to Memphis, Tennessee, on behalf of 1,300 sanitation workers, AFSCME members. Those striking sanitation workers weren't simply fighting for better pay and safer working conditions. They were asserting a claim on our democracy. But today's attacks on workers' rights and voting rights tell us the fight for democracy is not over. Victories that were decades in the making can be undone with the governor's signature, a legislator's vote, or yes, our own apathy.
This has been Our View, brought to you by the proud members of the Washington Federation of State Employees and recipient of 2 recent Excellence in Labor Journalism Awards from the International Labor Communications Association. We remind you, when you accept a paycheck for your hard work, you don't give up your rights. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the new year.